Present, we have Dr. Ramirez, Trustee Dryden, Trustee Sullivan, and myself, Sandra Romero. Absent is Dr. Camby, Trustee Nowak, and Brianna, she doesn't attend. Actually,
She's not present.
she's not present.
Mhm. And Ms. Peterson will be joining us shortly.
All right, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion carries 3-0. Do we have any public comments on closed session items?
Hmm.
Nope. So at this moment, we will close for closed session and we'll return at about 7 o'clock.
Be shorter than that, but yes.
All right. Mhm. So for next meeting, are we gonna meet here too?
No, by that time, we should be back in.
Back to normal.
I'll have an update for it, but
Alrighty.
so are they coming?
Are we?
Yeah, we can go ahead and get started. I'll
Okay.
just message them and
Okay.
they'll come.
Alrighty. So we stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right over
Yes,
this.
it's right over there.
Okay. Hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 14 and the special board meeting of June 16, 2022?
I move to approve both the regular board meeting held, the minutes from the regular board meeting on June 14th, as well as the special board meeting minutes from June 16th.
Is there a second?
Also,
All in favor? 3-0. Okay, let's see, would the audience, anybody in the audience like to address the board? I don't believe so. All right, so we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
think of it to maintain minutes. All right, well, good evening, everyone. I'm very glad to be able to kick off a new school year. Obviously, as
this school year promises to be very, very important, and more than the last three, really. It promises to be a year that really kicks off very well for us, and that has a lot of promise, and more certainty than the last few years have brought on. So in terms of an agenda, we have a few items to cover. I'll start with the opening of the school year. Just last night, as a starting point, we had a community gathering. Very, very nice turnout. We had well over 100 participants, which I think just goes to represent, the engagement of our families and parents and staff. So very, very happy that we were able to accommodate and kind of get everybody together. I won't go into too many of these details because they have been covered in the community gathering, only to say that we are just making sure that we are communicating with our families, providing updates, finalizing plans, and providing tools for our families to continue to work through and use as resources as we go along in the year. So one of the biggest things is that we are re-enrolling. 2 years ago, we were still doing this by paper and in print, and not that we still aren't. Our families still submit their enrollment and registration that way, but increasingly we have transitioned to a more effective and efficient way of allowing our parents and families to give us the information that they need in a way that can be constantly updated. So we're very happy about that. It's proven to be a great time saver for our staff and a way to maintain good communication with our families. School hours are listed there. Obviously, our very first day of school is this coming Wednesday. So we're incredibly excited, right, to welcome our kids back anew, especially as we'll see to upgraded facilities that are going to really serve us well. More on that in a minute. We'll talk a little bit more about meals a little bit later, but for now, questions have come up around the availability of universal meals, as there have been for the last 2 years. And that will continue to be the case because of ongoing funding from the state. So we're going to try to message that as best we can and work to receive the documentation that we need in order to make sure that our students are counted appropriately. In terms of learning and engagement, to pivot there, we've talked about this dating back to last year, Framework for the Future. It really is an overall plan, a broad framework that is really intended to help us identify the skills and competencies that our students most need to be able to be successful, not just during their time here at Mesa, but that we want to be able to turn our attention to, so that when they leave us in 8th grade, more and more of our students can demonstrate these comfortably and be able to carry them out in high school and beyond, the world of work, in higher education, throughout their lives as professionals and just community members. So this is a new design, if you will, and the slivers within it are those competencies. They are those skills and competencies that we want to engender in our students. And you see the 6 represented there. We'll get to those in just a moment. But beyond that, the outer rim is the how. What should learning experiences look like in order for us to be able to get to those end results for all our students? And as we talk about this, we have so many different plans that we want to be able to distill them into all these plans working in unison. So what you see here is a graphic that tells you how the framework will influence all of our plans, and has already influenced, from the local accountability plan to our other state plans, our ESSER plan, the list goes on and on, our early childhood plan, and how it promises to then reach the staff. And one of the things that I wanted to leave you with is that the annual scorecard is something that we have yet developed, but that is going to serve as the measuring stick for how we progress over the course of the year in terms of the framework for the future. So that's still yet to come. The idea here is that we get to a place of focus and cohesion and coherence, because we want our students to be able to not miss a beat as they move from one grade level to the next, and that all of our learning experiences are consistent across an entire grade level, that the learning is quality and rigorous and engaging across any classroom on campus. That's the end goal, okay? So with that said, let's dive into our focus for the year. The learning model calls for 4 pillars, and these are the 4 here: that our learning experiences should be personalized, that they should be authentic, that they should be based on competencies, and that they should be inclusive and equitable. Those are the criteria that we're going to continue to measure against when we talk about learning day in, day out. For this year, we want to focus our attention on personalization, and you see there what that entails. It entails amplifying student voice. It entails being able to, well, I'm going to skip ahead to the authenticity, because between those voice and choice is really something that we need to provide for our students. It needs to continue to be where learning makes sense for the student, but also builds from their assets in a way that they can resonate with the learning that happens. And the learning shouldn't just happen within the walls. It should be inclusive of things that happen throughout their time, not just at Mesa, but also even starts to pull in the community in which they reside and our community here in Mesa. So the personalization is where we've chosen to start, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to touch upon all the other 4. We just want to make it sustainable for ourselves. Moving forward, this is kind of a more scripted and more detailed way of understanding what personalization will mean to us. And this is something that as a staff, we need to just continue to circle back to and ground ourselves in. And we need to be able to bring our families and parents into what it means for them so that they can partner with us more effectively. So as you see there, what does personalization mean? It means that I'm using formative data. And formative data is not the way that an adult might. You see it there in an I statement. This is for the staff. I create opportunities to document and track learning that informs each learner's readiness, strengths, needs, and interests. That's an example. I want to leverage technology. Technology can be a great equalizer, but it has to be used appropriately, and we have to teach our students how to use it appropriately, so that it's not just for entertainment or but rather as a tool and an extension of learning, an accelerator for learning. So each one of these I can move on and on about, but for the time being, just know that this is the working definition of how we as a staff are going to take on personalization. And we've already undertaken quite a bit of that last year, but we need to circle back and continue to focus on learning experiences being grounded in this focus. Speaking of that, there's a lot here, but I'm going to try to be very succinct about it. One of the things that we know needs to occur is that students need learning supports regardless of who they are. If they're a student that is achieving at or above what is expected of the grade level, then the learning support starts to look like an acceleration, starts to look like an accelerant. And for students that may not be achieving at that level, it means how do we get them closer to the mark over the course of the school year and obviously year to year. So the CASP testing that we undertook in the spring, we received those results. This next board meeting, I'll have a more thorough report, and we will circle back to this as well, so that we can talk about not just what we're doing, but what we've done and what we want to continue to grow and cement. But in terms of learning supports, a couple of things that are new. Number one, we have actually aligned our times between PE, music, library time, so that we can maximize and create pockets of time so that the teachers can collaborate on a weekly basis. That took quite a bit of logistical work to make happen and staffing to come along with it. But we are now in a place where we have pockets of time that we're going to develop within the week to week, to be able to provide opportunities for teachers to come together and really talk about their instruction, to talk about the goals that we've set out again over the course of the year. So this is new to Mesa because previously it existed, and it should result in no downtime or no loss of time of students in music, in art, in PE, and their time in the library. We've just coordinated the schedules differently. That's really exciting, and teachers have been asking for that opportunity to collaborate more frequently and to be able to be more consistent in terms of their goal setting. Professional learning, we're going to continue to work with Katie Martin as a facilitator, unpack some of these concepts, but more than that, early childhood learning. Matter of fact, I just got a text from our early learning group and our learning support group. They're collaborating this evening. They've been working hard this entire summer on how to launch and how to get everybody really grounded in what the foundational the foundational pieces of early literacy really mean as teachers, as educators. So that's just one example. That initiative really started last spring and will continue to strengthen over the course of this year. Our learning support team is part of that initiative, and we have teachers that are pushing into the classroom, working with small groups at their level to build them up, using assessments to see how they're progressing, and then being able to communicate not only with the teacher, but with the parents as well, so that we know and can better track and monitor how students are progressing week to week and over the course of time. This year, we're also looking to, we're bringing on board an additional teacher through some of the additional funding that we have to focus very intently on middle school math, 6-8, but that also will extend into the upper grades, likely 3 to 5, because we need to pay close attention to mathematics as a building block for future, well, mathematics alone, but also for as a foundation to other courses of study, particularly higher level sciences. So that's something that we're focusing on, and we're now positioned to bring on board. On the right side, we have increased our mental health and social emotional learning. Our counselor is now up to 3 days a week, so we've partnered with county office on that, as well as a psychologist on campus for 4 days a week. So that is an increase from years past. We've also onboarded Second Step as a curriculum. That is going to be the work of this year, how to bring students onto learning about their own social emotional well-being, as well as how to bring good practices within the classroom and ultimately the school. So all of these are either initiatives that were initiated last year or ones that are going to be onboarding this year. On the right side, we've also expanded after-school programming to come into K-1. Now, that's a new venture for us. Our parents and families are we're very much looking forward to that. It's been coming across to us now for a couple of years. So we're going to start moving in that direction. Admittedly, there may not be the capacity at this point to be able to take on everybody who has an express need, but the commitment is to continue to staff up and as best we can to be able to meet that need wherever we can. And then lastly, our ability to really use data to inform our practices just needs to continue to grow and expand. And so we've got some programs there that we've started with last year and continue to extend this year to help us in that avenue, because we have to be able to measure our efforts in order to determine whether we're on the right track or not. So more to come on this, but I wanted to just share that the work of responding to student needs has begun and began really more than a year ago, but it's been increasing every day since. On the health and wellness side, there's quite a bit here. I will only say a few things. One, we continue to be vigilant around health and wellness, and there are things that we are mandated to continue to apply and abide by. Vaccination and quarantine requirements, those continue to be, although vaccinations for students are not mandatory. That did not come into fruition this year, so that's been delayed. And the other thing is that there are some new requirements, if you will. All of these are really toning down the mitigation efforts and allowing us to have a little more flexibility as conditions have improved over the last year, really. We will continue with screening and symptom checking, and we're going to count on our families to continue to do that with us and for us. Moving ahead, one important piece, we continue to receive updates around decision trees, but as of this year, we no longer have to report cases directly to CDPA or to Ventura County Public Health. So that requirement has been really sunset at this point. But internally, we're going to continue to monitor and notify. We will continue to inform parents whenever there's a positive case, and we will continue to track it by way of our dashboard. Okay, facilities. Moving into facilities. As the board is aware and the community at this point is aware, we were undertaking a huge project over the summer. It was a significant undertaking. And I'm still very excited about the fact that it's going to bring tremendous value. But unfortunately, we did experience a few delays. The good news right now is that 5 of our buildings were really the ones that were the focal point, which is a significant part of our campus. 3 of them are scheduled to be occupied as early as tomorrow. Okay, so we're very much on track. The work will continue through the end of the week, and will continue during evening hours just to finalize over the coming days and weeks. But the bulk of the project has been completed. Now it's about just making sure everything is operational and really the way that we need it to function. Where the delays have been more significant is in our cafeteria kitchen area and in our administrative offices and in our 4 kindergarten classrooms, which is considered the A and the B building. To that end, the initial thought was that we would have those buildings unavailable to us for at least the first part of the year, but those efforts have really been accelerated. And we are now really looking at the middle of September, really perhaps even by that second week of September. So we're not that far off from being able to occupy those spaces anew. In the meantime, we've been hard at work at creating contingency plans, and we have those plans in hand, and we're going to be working with we're going to be communicating those plans. We already started last night at the community gathering. We'll continue to do that over the coming days as we head into the opening of the year. So here are just some pictures that give you a sense of what those look like. Those are mainly from the exterior and only represent largely the windows, which is more or less what you can see. What you can experience, though, as we get this on everything online, will be a better learning environment and working environment inside of those classrooms with the HVAC equipment. And again, all of this is really a credit to our community that has entrusted us with with that funding through the Measure O bond. And so at the conclusion of this particular project, we're going to embark then upon some communication with our community so that they understand, where we are as far as what we've been able to accomplish just in the few short years since that bond was passed. Okay, I'm going to wrap up with just upcoming events. Thursday, we have a middle school orientation, and something that I forgot to add here is that tomorrow we're going to welcome back our teachers and staff into our kickoff. We're very fortunate that because of our facilities being unavailable to us to be able to hold everybody in one space, we've actually moved over to the Oxnard Union High School district office. So it's a real pleasure to have them host us, and we're really excited that will happen tomorrow. We'll be back on campus on Thursday, and we'll be meeting here in our science lab. We're going to be working on 2 days of professional learning and collaboration, really delving into our logistics, and also setting our plans for our instructional program, our academic goals. On Thursday, we will have a middle school orientation. That'll be via Zoom. And then Monday, we will have a TKK Tiger Cub meet and greet that unfortunately we're going to have virtually because of the facilities. But we very much look forward to sharing some updated information with our families there. And our first day of school, of course, will be Wednesday, August 24th. Very excited. And the 15th, we're still on track at this point to host our back to school night in person for TK5 with our back to school night for middle school 6-8 on September 22nd at 6 p.m. So with that said, I'll be concluding my superintendent's report.
I have a question in regards to the construction. I appreciate the updates that we've been getting about what was encountered as we embarked on this project. And one of my questions is, I see people out there working out, for which I'm grateful that they're working. But who's shouldering that cost? There's overtime costs that are being incurred. And how's that being managed? Because I also know that we have to pay for bed and plate, and we're paying overtime. It's a huge cost. How does that impact the overall project?
So that's a great question, and it's a very appropriate question. I'll have more information to you as early as September, but here's what I can tell you. Number one, we did have a contract set out, and that was bid upon by Monet Construction, and that came with very specific conditions that entail project completion and a level of responsibility for both parties. So right now, as it stands, we built in a $150,000 contingency already into that plan. Typically, as I've come to know more about these types of projects, this is a pretty big project. A more comfortable figure would have been 10%. That's more consistent with a project this size. What I can tell you, based on some of that new work that you mentioned, Mr. Sullivan, we are well below that 10% threshold. Okay, so on a project this size, it's a approximately $3.5 million project. 10% of that is in the neighborhood of $350,000, and we are appropriately under that figure as we speak. Because of the demolition phase, we suspect that most of those big expenditures that the board has received over the summer, that we've discovered those. Any future expenditures will be very minimal compared to the large discoveries that were made as the demolition phase was in full swing. So I can tell you that as it's tracking right now, we are at our agreed upon contract figure plus 10%. And I think for a project of this size, it's more than appropriate, especially because of the timeline between modernization efforts, right? It's been quite a number of years since those spaces have been brought into the fold this way. So yes, and a lot of that has been constant and ongoing communication with the contractor to be able to make sure that we receive updates I mean, multiple times a day is basically how this has been progressing over the last 3 to 4 weeks, especially.
Any more comments?
I was just going to comment that I've already seen us using the personalization from the end of last year to this year based on the Youth Truth surveys that were put out. So I just want to make sure that we also are letting our community know, especially all of our students who participate, to let them know that their voices were heard. And I know we made a substantial, effort to do that, and we've changed some things based on their comments. So, sometimes things aren't obvious unless they're pointed out. So I just wanted to make sure that we point those things out. We will assume that the kids will notice with a variety in the cafeteria that we heard them, but we also need to let them know we heard them. We will let them know their comments about different school attire or things that they could wear on campus or not, or things that they do on campus or not, were heard. And that's why things were changed, because unless they know and it's explicit that their voices were heard, they may not recognize it. They may just go, oh, that changed. Oh, and it may not occur to them that they were heard. So I just want to make sure that it's obvious, because we do want their voices heard. We do want them to communicate with us. And the way to have that communication is to make sure that they feel heard.
Absolutely, and that is going to continue to be our work, and we have to find ways of communicating and using our existing channels, whether it's Mesa Matters or our social media, but also continue to loop in. And we will continue to have a particular middle school focus group this year as a starting point. So as we clear this big phase of construction, definitely a focus on that will continue.
Anything else? Nope. Any reports or communications from the board? None? All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
There's also, I have an interest. So last year we talked about the Camarillo Christmas parade, and I know that they're already asking for entrance into that. So I wanted to make sure that that's something that's still on the radar for us to consider being and participating in.
Did you mention something? Okay. Sorry. Well, talking about that, if we're going to market, where I've noticed, seen a lot of kids that come from very good families is the Santa Clara Country Club. And I think that's a good place where we can market to. There's a lot of grandparents that take their grandkids, and parents that take their own kids to that location. So maybe consider somehow market there too, and it's local, it's within our districts. Just a thought.
Okay.
All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
And one sec.
All in favor? Are there any questions? Discussions?
Apparently, yes.
I guess I just wanted to point out that in our purchase orders and our check register for the summer, there, was definitely some abnormal activity, but it's because of all the construction and also because of our associations and how we do accounting with the charter school. So I wanted to just make note, because it is sizable, that those are abnormal things that occur during this time, but also because of all of the bond expenditures, we're seeing numbers that we don't typically see. So I just wanted to make that apparent.
I have one with regards to the enrollment. Did you have an updated number?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. We were trying to solidify some glitches in our rollover. Basically, we need to create a summer school, and it was commingling with our this year's enrollment. We think we're going to get that all straightened out by the end of this week. So I'll have an updated figure sometime at the end of this week or early part of next. Certainly by next board meeting, we'll have an enrollment because we will have opened the year. But I will try to get a figure by the end of this week, early part of next.
Anything else?
I guess it's a silly question and it's going to show my own ignorance to this. But we talked about our MOUs that we have with Soma School District and also with Briggs. And they are very comparable to each other. The hourly rates are provided. There's less than a 5% increase from the previous years, which is all good things. I guess when we talk about this program a lot, I don't know why I always forget Briggs, but we talk so much about SOMAS. So I guess if we could just make sure to highlight that in the future conversations, because I know we work so much with SOMAS on that. I think sometimes I forget about Briggs. So I want to make sure that that stays on the forefront.
Anything else? All those in favor in approving the consent agenda? 6-0. All right, and let's see. So item 11 is informational only. 11A relates to the 22-23 Golden Valley Charter School budget, and 11B relates to the proposal of MUST to the Mesa Union School District regarding negotiations for the 22-23 school year. There's no motion there, right? Tammy has a presentation.
No, the presentation will be for action for 12B is what we're looking at a presentation. Actually, I take that back. It will be for, yeah, for 12B, for the consolidated application.
Is she gonna come in?
Yes, let me make sure that she's aware. But as far as the information item for Golden Valley, as you know, is an authorizing, I'm sorry, we are the authorizing agent for Golden Valley Charter School. And the only piece that this is information for the board, for this board. The board does not approve their budget here, but rather is informed as part of the MOU process. And what I can continue to report on that, being on that board, is that they have a very healthy reserve, and they do have a new executive director who I've already had an opportunity to communicate with and start to establish not just rapport, but really some consistency around how we'll work together. But in any event, their budget right now continues to be very healthy. Now, they did experience, and they have experienced, a decline in enrollment, a rather large decline in enrollment. So I know that that is something that they have been actively turning their attention to. It was a topic of conversation with their executive director, and so they did have a pretty sizable wait list. And part of the challenge for them is that because they are not geographically bound, they needed to find staffing in the right locations to be able to serve a hub of students. And that is at least what was represented to me as being a bit of a challenge. However, they have moved ahead with staffing, and so they are now fully invested into their wait list and in trying to recuperate enrollment over the course of the coming months as they head into the new school year.
All right, anything else? No more? Okay. All right, moving on to item 12. Is there a motion to ratify the service agreement with BC Rincon Construction for the parking lot and basketball court stripping?
I move that we ratify the service agreement with BC Rincon Construction, Inc. for the parking lot and basketball court stripe.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Any discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 2-0. All right. Item 12B. Motion, is there a motion to approve the 2022 consolidated application report?
I move that we adopt or approve the 2022 Con App.
Is there a second?
I will second, but I'd like to discuss.
Okay.
So if we could discuss what that application entails, because there was no link provided.
Ms. Peterson has a report.
I can speak to that. So basically what the consolidated application is a formalized application for federal funds, and specifically titles 1, 3, actually we don't do 3, so it's 1 and 4, 1, 2, and 4 actually. So what we do is we apply every year annually to the federal government, and we stipulate in this application what our assurances are, in other words, what we're committing to implementing, but also that we have the demographics amongst our students to be able to substantiate applying to those specific funds. So for example, you see there in Title I, we're applying for Title I Part A, that's the basic grant, and that is largely based on our percentage of students not meeting or low-income students in that case, and that's why we're applying. In Part 2, supporting effective instruction, and Part 2 or Part 3 is the English learner, which we don't have enough of a percentage, believe it or not, to be able to really the funding. It doesn't really.
There's a $10,000
Yeah.
threshold, otherwise you have to join.
And so that funding source is very, very low, even though we do have a percentage of our students who are identified as English learners. And then the last one is Part 4, or Title 4, which is on student school support. So you see each one of the categorical programs, they're identified, and this becomes one application toward those funds. And sorry, Ms. Peterson, if you'd like to extend any further information.
We have to report to the consolidated application. Not only will it cost information about the student, it's probably January, February, depending on how long it takes for them to process. We'll have another big one. And of course, this is what we have in place. So we'll get on the also, further information on the course of
Approximately how much in revenue do we get from the federal government?
excluding answer, not a significant amount, but as we saw with the pandemic, it's beneficial. Not all but a very small portion is based on having funding. So that's what allows me to see. So probably, I'd have to say, well, when you consider your REAP grant, that's all. So probably just over $100,000.
The REAP grant is about 48,000, I believe.
Yes, and then Title I, back goes back, and then I think we should have $1,000. With that, we can- multiple districts.
No, I get that. In days gone by, I'm assuming that because I think we've been passing this CONAP for a long time, but I'm talking decades ago. I believe the CONAP was also associated. We were getting like 5% of our revenue was coming from the federal government. They had like 100% control of what our curriculum was and how we operated. And so I was just kind of curious how that's changed or adapted over the past several years. And that's a pretty significant difference, you know.
And actually, if you were to include it, and that's why I remember my pilot. But when we're speaking just the title program, I would know 100,000. And while they have some control and there's certain reporting requirements, I don't think it's as significant as that.
Yeah, I would only add to echo those sentiments. One other thing is, I think in working with Ms. Peterson, since I've been here, historically, we've used them for a very specific purpose, so as to just be very consistent. And I think that it has allowed us to sustain staffing, especially once you include the REAP grant, and then not be as beholden to some of the strings and influences that it may have on our program. So I find it to be a good source of funding. Certainly every dollar counts, and it has allowed us to move ahead pretty well over the years, especially because of what it then allows us to take on in terms of more financial support, like she mentioned in the IDEA and so on and so forth. So I would say that my perception of it is that it hasn't influenced us a great deal in terms of our other programs. So we just want to make sure that it all works in unison.
We try not to use most of the other funding for things that eat, because it can be a source. Over the last few years, I've been more maintenance, but going forward, there's a lot of other.
The notes also mention a Title V, is there?
Yes. That's a rural education. Rural education.
Assistance program?
Assistance program, and it's school district have left every 3 years. So the time that we call that, qualified students who got into that, and it's qualified, and it's only for districts that are rural. So the school district, there are only 3 that not teachers, Santa Fe, and then. They're not considered rural.
Any more discussion? Nope. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Is there a motion to approve the revised 22-23 bell schedule?
I move to approve the revised TK through 8th grade bell schedule, assuming that it meets all educational instructional minutes are satisfied.
Is there a second?
No, I accept. No, I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
Has it been tested?
Yes, it meets all of the, it actually exceeds all of the minimum requirements.
None of the data.
Right, but you've tested the physical bell schedule that say it goes off at the proper times.
We have, and yes, that is something that Ms. Kuklinski has taken on quite well.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. All right. Is there a motion to approve the 22-23 Mesa Union School Safety Plan?
I move to approve the 2022-2023 Mason School Safety Program.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
I'm wondering how it differs from previous years.
It doesn't differ a great deal at this point, except that there are new staff members and a lot of things that are brought current, just to make sure that we're in keeping. Where there is more attention and we want to continue to delve into is our protocols for active shooter. That is something that has been very much on the minds of our parents. And so from that standpoint, I messaged this, actually, you'll have it in your summary, but I will say that now. Let me start big picture. Our Ventura County Schools Self-Funding Authority just last week shared with us more fully a more comprehensive approach to safety planning. And so over the course of this entire year, we'll be delving into retooling and revisiting all of our comprehensive safety plans across all districts. So that'll be something that I'll be undertaking. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to look at this plan with fresh eyes. Not just the active shooter component, but that is a very big area of concern for all of our schools that unfortunately are considered soft targets. Beyond that, locally, we already have communication with the Sheriff's Department to be able to set aside dedicated time here in September to be able to have a more formalized training with our staff. These are very challenging conversations that as the adults, we have to grapple with first, because it involves communication to a range of students whose development is in very different stages. And then how to communicate that further with our parents. So the plan right now on paper exists, and we will speak to that tomorrow. We already started today with our new teacher orientation, really delving into components of the plan, particularly those that we know have been a topic of conversation for us and that we had already identified going back to last year. But moving forward, there are going to be specific areas that are going to receive greater and greater attention. And that being one of them. So in terms of updates from last year, not a wholesale change at this point. We might see that as we look into the next iteration of the plan.
I just have a couple of questions. You bring up active shooter, and it is in the forefront of many people's minds. And one of those is that I do not want to be a participant in some sort of fiasco like what happened in Uvalde. And so part of that is knowing ahead of time what is going to be the Sheriff Department's plan of attack once should there ever be. I don't expect there will be, but if there were one, are they going to sit and wait for their tactical unit to come before they engage, or are they going to go straight for the active shooter?
I can't answer that yet. I can just tell you that the most current guidance around that, it used to be able to hide in place, to be able to shelter in place. No longer. The guidance now is very simple, but very, very difficult to implement. It's run, hide, fight. And for
that's been in
us,
place for at least 5 years.
correct. But what I'm getting at is that
We need to find out from the Sheriff's Department how they're going to respond. That's a direct question to ask.
agreed. I think we do need to establish what their protocols are. And we have a series of questions that we need to answer because of how we're situated. Every school and school district is situated differently. And for us, we need to be able to maintain the fact that we aren't in residential area, the fact that we don't have but one way in and out. So there are some very specific things that we need to work through. And that'll be the topic of conversation. So even before reaching the staff, or even after reaching the staff, it's going to require some conversation and planning, careful planning with our local sheriff. But bear in mind, it's not just local sheriff that would be responding. We would have multiple agencies potentially responding. And some of it may be just whoever's more proximal, including fire, including medical. So once you start going into that layer of things, it starts to become much more involved with interagency conversations. I don't want to overcomplicate things at this point. We will ask those questions in a very straightforward way to be able to have an understanding of how they plan on approaching things, at least as an agency.
Right. The other thing is, you talk about resources that we have. Run is the first thing that we do. And I didn't see where, we're still in the shelter in place modality. And we're not utilizing the resources that are at our availability. And it's never been the case that we've had those. That's never been even, well, I've suggested for 5 years that we've got this lemon orchard out here to our right. And 10 rows in, there is a shallow drainage ditch that's always dry. Moving targets are hard to hit by any shooter. And we don't even take that into consideration. I do not want our teachers dying, being the first person to die for our students, and they're just being shot afterwards. And we don't need fish in a barrel, and we need to be adults about this and say, how do we protect our children? And that's in the forefront of my mind, because there are other ways out, and sometimes I don't think we consider those.
We have the gates that were included a few years back, which I agree with. And these gates are used for purposes of not having trespassers who are not invited into the premises. But then there are times where we have other doors that are open. Basically, in having these doors open, we can have a trespasser or somebody who's not invited into the premises and do something that we don't want them to do. So how are we supposed to manage these other doors that are left open and not supervised?
This is probably going to be a conversation had in multiple installments. Here's what I can tell you. It's very difficult to balance the interests and desires of family to be included, for schools to be welcoming places, and reach the level of security that you're speaking about. We have certainly put protocols in place so that we funnel the attention of visitors and guests and volunteers through our main office, as an example. And perimeter fencing or gates provide a physical barrier that can be helpful. Mostly to keep, to have a fair understanding of who's on campus. Active shooters are a case completely aside. I hate to say it in those ways. Somebody who comes onto a school campus with the express purpose of causing harm to anybody, unfortunately, that renders us very, very vulnerable. And this is why these conversations are so difficult to have, because they ultimately have to find their way to 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. And that's why, as a staff, we need to have a firm understanding of what those protocols entail fully. Not that we don't know them by way of our plan, but what do they mean for us if I'm located in one part of the building versus another? But to answer your question directly, we certainly try to maintain a perimeter barriers and use our fencing to our advantage. But yes, we have a lot of staff, we have a lot of visitors, we have a very friendly and inviting group of kids that sometimes, in a very well-meaning way, are trying to be accommodating for an adult and may open the gate in a way that I, for example, have called some attention, not in a reprimanding way, but just to let them know that there's ways that we deal with this. So we will continue to be proactive about identifying those areas. I know specific gates that you might be alluding to that can be and will be problematic. And we have to continue to pay attention to that. There's not an easy solution.
Yeah, I think what is within our control is trying to be proactive in trying to keep them closed. We don't know who may or may not come and do something or not.
Sure.
But what we can have control of is the doors and how we keep them secured. All right.
No, I agree with that, but I'm going to point out that in every active shooter at a school that has had safety measures such as that put into place, from the days of Columbine until now, every single safety measure put into place by way of gates, doors, locking doors, has been compromised within seconds by the active shooter. Sandy Hook, there's a brand new locking system. They lock the doors at a specified time. And within less than a minute, the active shooter compromised that system and got into the children. And so to me, it's a false sense of security. I'm not saying don't have these things. I want you to hear me out, but we cannot have a false sense of security saying, oh, we've got these measures in place, we are safe. We certainly are not. It happened in Sandy Hook, it happened in Columbine, it happened in Uvalde. You know, they had a lockdown situation. They're a lockdown campus. One person left the door open. I get that. But it was compromised within seconds. And we cannot expect that Park Lane was another one. They had another closed campus that was locked to protect the students, but the shooter got in, was not even stopped or challenged. And so we can plan for all the safety measures in the world to keep people out, but those people that are determined to get in are going to get in. They are. And we're foolish to think that we're going to put something in place that's going to keep everybody out, because we're not. Because there will be a weakness, they will find it, they will exploit it, and they'll overcome it within seconds. Therefore, we need to make sure that our teachers, staff, and children and students are taught and trained how to protect them responsibly and safely and keep them alive. I want my teachers here at this campus to live for our students and get them out alive, not be the first to die. And so I'll leave that alone. It's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, there's clearly a lot of energy and a lot of thoughts go into this, and certainly it came up in our community gathering yesterday as a comment from at least a parent, but I've heard it dating back to last year as things became more consistent, and attention started to turn to, unfortunately, those familiar threats that have become commonplace in our schools and in our society. It's not just schools. So you have my commitment that we will continue to focus on this, that we will continue to address it. We have historically, we've done well in practicing our drills. We've done well in finding paths of evacuation. And I'm glad that we do. We have a history of that here at Mesa that dates back long before I came on board. But needless to say, the level of complexity and reaction that is required puts us in a very difficult position. So we will continue to focus on that as a way of trying to stay ready and trying to be prepared.
Yeah, maybe also keep an eye on actual students. Sometimes it comes from them, the idea. So just keep an eye out for that.
I guess that's my point, and I think we need to look at that other whole side of the coin. Is that's why we also are having more counselors, more days on staff. That's why we're having a school psychologist, more days on site. So to actually affect the children to get to that point or to not get to that point where they feel the need to react in that manner or to attack in that manner is what's so important. A gate can be open and closed, but what we need to get is inside the children's heart and in their mind to make sure that they feel that this is a secure spot and that there are adults here that are willing to listen to whatever problems they are having. And that is how I think we will really prevent those kind of acts, because a lot of those are community members that do those horrible things, but it's because they saw no other way out. We need to make sure that they know that there is someone there for them,
And we have that, right?
and we're doing that.
Yeah.
Support.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, Ms. Dryden, because I'll just finish with this. Safety has become much bigger than just a physical plan or drills. And not that it ever was something to take lightly, but we weren't as vulnerable as we felt probably over the last 10 to 15 years. It's been really just continuing to escalate. But to your point, the social emotional component, the health and wellness, psychologically, emotionally of our students and staff has been tremendous. Now, the advantage that we have here at Mesa is that we have a very interconnected set of family, community, They alert us all the time. Mr. Sullivan pointed something out to me last year that we immediately acted upon. And we were able to get to the bottom of that within minutes. And when time is of the essence, every single member of this community is valuable. So we have a lot of assets to offer. Like every other district or school, we grapple with these very things that are unfortunately increasingly out of our control. But we have gone to great lengths to influence the things that we can most influence. And so I'm very proud of that. And we still have work to do. I was laying out kind of what we want to take as concrete steps over the coming weeks and over the course of the year.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Is there a motion to approve the site reservation agreement with Pali Institute for the use of Pali Institute's outdoor education program for the 22-23 school year?
I move that we approve the site reservation agreement with Pali Institute for the outdoor education program for 22-23 school year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Only that I think this is a wonderful experience, so I'm glad we continue to offer it.
I second that too.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Is there a motion to accept the quarterly report on Williams uniform complaint regarding textbooks and instructional materials, teacher vacancy, or misassignment and facilities conditions?
I so move,
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion?
only that there were no complaints.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
3-0.
You need to call for,
I'm sorry?
it's a technical thing.
All righty. Okay,
First read.
we'll move on. This is for review, for the review of the trustees. Item 12G, the June 2022 board policy revisions for the sections listed. All right, moving on, personnel. Is there a motion to approve the appointment of Mr. Klinsky as school principal?
I move that we approve the hiring of Kim Lucy as the school principal.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Any discussion?
Yes, you'll have to bear with me. First and foremost, I'm very grateful to the board for your support in moving in this direction and reestablishing a principal role. So thank you for that. I know that was the conversation for us, and I appreciate the level of seriousness and the level of dialogue that allowed us to reach this point. Beyond that, I think that Ms. Klinsky will do tremendously well in that capacity, in that role. I think that she has been serving and operating in a fashion that proves that. And I'm really looking forward to supporting her development, to continue to see her growth and continue to see her connections to this community that are very longstanding, continue to maintain. So I'm very, very, very proud to be a part of this decision and to give her an opportunity that is more than well deserves.
I wanted to say something. What year did you start here?
I started here, this is actually going to be my 20th year. I started,
Oh,
I started as a paraprofessional.
and you made this your home.
More than that, I know it's just Florida.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And you have a son too, right?
I do.
Did he
So my
come here?
son went through kindergarten to 8th grade. He's now 22 years old. His daughter's in 7th grade. So yeah, he's the best.
Yeah. Any discussion? Any more discussion? Okay. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, 3-0. Moving on. Is there a motion to approve the following teachers for the 22-23 school year in accordance with Education Code 4425-6B? And it starts with Cindy Davis, Patrice McKenna, and Shannon Robertson.
I move that we authorize the following teachers, Cindy Davis, Patrice McKenna, and Shannon Roberson, to the positions as outlined in the agenda tonight.
My second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Is there a motion to approve the hiring of the following certificated and classified staff, starting with Omar Soto and ending with Karen Kerper on section 13C of the agenda?
I move to approve the hiring of the certificated and classified staff as listed.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. All right, do we have a motion to approve the leave of classified staff ending in number 364?
I move that we approve the leave request for employee ending in 364, effective August 24th through August 30 or October 31st.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0, motion carries. All right. Items for future consideration. The unaudited actuals and GAN limits resolution. And our future meeting is September 20th at 6 p.m. We are adjourning at 8 p.m. All right. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Ken.
Super excited.